Jesus does not endorse taxation. Roman taxes were not just financial, but a reminder of their subjugation, contrary to God's sovereignty. No one can serve two masters. Welcome to Biblical Bitcoin, where we explore the intersection of Judeo-Christian principles and the revolutionary world of Bitcoin. I'm Anthony Angelo, and today we tackle a provocative question: did Jesus support taxes? This inquiry is not merely historical, but resonates with modern debates about financial autonomy, ethical stewardship, and state authority, issues central to both biblical teaching and the ethos of decentralized systems like Bitcoin. Our goal is to examine Jesus' teachings through a scriptural lens, drawing on key Bible verses to steelman the case that Jesus does not endorse taxation as a moral or divine imperative. Instead, his words and actions suggest a critical stance towards coercive state systems, aligning with principles of individual liberty and divine sovereignty. Let's begin with historical context before diving into the scriptures to help make our case. To understand Jesus' perspective, we must first understand the world he lived in. First century Judea was under Roman occupation, and taxation was a heavy burden. The Roman Empire imposed multiple taxes: the poll tax, the land tax, and customs duties, etc. These were often collected by local tax collectors, often Jews like Zacchaeus, who were despised for collaborating with Rome to extort and oppress their own people. For many Jews, Roman taxes were not just financial, but a reminder of their subjugation and symbolic of their oppression. Zealots, a Jewish faction, opposed these taxes, viewing them as contrary to God's sovereignty. Against this backdrop, Jesus' words on the matter carry profound weight as they navigate both Roman authority and Jewish expectations. Let's turn to the most cited passage on this topic, Matthew 22:15-22, often called the Render unto Caesar episode. The Pharisees seeking to trap Jesus ask, "Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" This is a loaded question. If Jesus says yes, he risks alienating Jews who resent Roman rule. If he says no, he can be accused of sedition, and the Romans would carry out the Pharisees' dirty work for them. His response is masterful. In Matthew 22:19-21, Jesus says, "Show me the coin used for the tax." They bring him a denarius, and he asks, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" They reply, "Caesar's." Jesus then declares, "Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." At first glance, this might seem like an endorsement of taxation. Many scholars interpret it as Jesus advocating for a distinction between civic and spiritual duties. However, a closer reading suggests another layer to it. Jesus does not explicitly say, "Pay the tax." Instead, he shifts the focus to a deeper question: what belongs to Caesar and what belongs to God? The denarius bore Caesar's image, signifying his claim to authority. But Genesis 1:27 states that humans are made in God's image. By juxtaposing Caesar's image on a coin with God's image in humanity, Jesus implies that ultimate allegiance belongs to God, not the state. If all things, our lives, our resources, our purpose, are God's, what is truly owed to Caesar? Perhaps nothing, if Caesar's demands conflict with God's will. Give to Caesar the denarius, which is temporary, fiat, by decree, irrelevant within a couple hundred years, but give to God what has his inscription: us, our present selves, our future selves, and our past selves. Money can be defined as a technology that stores the time and energy of people. The efforts of your past self, however productive, have likely turned into some form of money. This is one manifestation of your past self. Does your past self have an inscription of God or Caesar on it? Render to God what is God's, render to Caesar what is Caesar's. Moreover, the Greek word for render, apodote, implies giving back what is rightfully owed. Jesus may be suggesting that Caesar's coin, a product of his own system, should return to him, but this does not affirm the moral legitimacy of taxation. Jesus addresses the temple tax, a Jewish levy based on Exodus 30:13. When asked if he pays it, Jesus tells Peter, "The sons are free." He implies that as God's son, he is exempt from the tax, which was meant for the upkeep of God's house. Yet to avoid offense, he miraculously provides a coin from a fish's mouth to pay it. This act underscores that Jesus' compliance is pragmatic, not an endorsement of the tax's legitimacy. His statement, "the sons are free," suggests that God's people owe their allegiance to him, not to human institutions. And luckily, now we're all sons and daughters. Another relevant passage is Matthew 6:24. No one can serve two masters. You cannot serve God and mammon. While mammon is often translated as wealth, it can also represent systems of material control, including state-enforced taxation. Taxes in Jesus' time often enriched the elite while burdening the poor, aligning with mammon's exploitative nature. Jesus' warning suggests that loyalty to God precludes subservience to systems that prioritize wealth over justice. Lastly, I find it important to point out that in 1 Samuel 8:1-22, the people of Israel saw other nations being led by kings, and they asked Samuel to appoint them a king as well. Samuel prayed and came back to the Israelites with God's words on the matter. I find it very interesting that part of God's warning about a king included taxation. If we read here, "He will take 1/10 of your grain and of your vintage and give it to his officials and attendants. Your male and female servants and the best of your cattle and donkeys he will take for his own use. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you yourselves will become his slaves. When that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day." 1/10. That would be nice, huh? What does this mean for us today? Jesus' teachings challenge the notion that taxation is inherently virtuous. Romans 13:1-7, often cited to support paying taxes, instructs believers to submit to governing authorities. However, this submission is highly historically contextual for Roman believers at the time, not absolute for all totalitarian regimes. When human laws conflict with God's, Acts 5:29 is clear. We must obey God rather than men. If taxes fund oppression or idolatry, Christian may question their moral obligation to comply. Fun fact, Benjamin Franklin had a quote which echoes Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God." It seems the Founding Fathers understood these concepts quite well. This perspective resonates with Bitcoin's ethos. Bitcoin, as a decentralized currency, bypasses centralized control, much like Jesus' teachings prioritize God's authority over Caesar's. It empowers individuals to steward their resources without intermediaries, aligning with biblical calls to stewardship. While Jesus obviously doesn't directly address Bitcoin, his emphasis on liberty and divine allegiance invite us to question systems that demand what belongs to God. So, did Jesus support taxes? The scriptures suggest he does not view them as a divine mandate. In Matthew 22, he reframes the question to prioritize God's sovereignty. In Matthew 17, he asserts freedom from human levies. And in his broader teachings, he critiques systems of control that rival God's authority. While Jesus navigated his context pragmatically, his words challenge us to discern what we owe to earthly powers and what we owe to God. As we explore Bitcoin through a biblical lens, we see parallels. A system that empowers individuals, resists centralized overreach, and encourages stewardship. I invite you to reflect. How do we balance civic duties with our ultimate allegiance to God? Share your thoughts in the comments and join us next time on Biblical Bitcoin to see the extent to which Bitcoin aligns with biblical justice. Thank you for joining us. If you found this analysis compelling, please hit the like and subscribe. Hit the bell for more. Tell your friends, ask the fun, important questions. Let's continue this journey along the crossroads of faith and finance. Until next time, may your stewardship be wise and your faith steadfast. Peace.